want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us tonight for this Highway 99 Revitalization and Gateway Stage 2 project. Before we get started, I also wanted to go through a quick introduction of our project team. We'll start with the city, and there's a couple people that might be straggling on afterwards. But my name is Bertrand House. I'm the project manager for this project. I'm also the transportation engineer for the City of Edmonds. Rob, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Rob English, city engineer.
And Phil, I think he's going to be joining us anytime now, but Phil Williams from Public Works Director will be joining us as well. So those are the three City of Edmonds representatives that will be here tonight. Then Lisa, if you want to introduce your team, please.
Yeah, I am Lisa Reed with SCJ Alliance, and we're the consultant team for the project. I'm the project manager, and then I'll have Juliana Varun and Jordan introduce themselves.
I'm Juliana Joyce. I'm the lead designer on this project.
Hi, I'm Varun Kalyanam. I'm the design engineer on this project.
I'm Jordan Graham. I'm also a design engineer on this project.
Thank you. So the goal of tonight's open house is to provide you with some project information. Obviously, we've been working on this project for a while now, but we're trying to give you a quick update on what's going on in this project, as well as hear your comments and hear your questions that you have regarding this project. And the outline for tonight is we'll do a presentation. Lisa and I will go over a presentation first. Then we'll be followed by a Q&A session. Looking at the number of attendees right now, we got 34. So we're talking about whether we might break out into breakout rooms so that we can hear everyone, because 34, we're reaching that level. It might be a couple of people that are going to join us afterwards, so we might be over 40 pretty soon. For that reason, yeah, we might go into breakout rooms and get as many comments from you guys as possible. And then another thing I wanted to mention is on our project website, after this meeting, we're going to put all the material we're presenting. In addition to that, there will be a survey that will be added to the website where you can provide additional comments, maybe some that you weren't able to address during tonight's presentation or during tonight's open house. There'll be a link, and if you guys can submit it or take a look at it before next Friday, that's kind of the deadline. In addition to that, on the survey, there'll be one of the questions is regarding your contact information. So if you can hopefully provide your email address so that we can keep you updated on how as this project is developing, we can keep you in the loop. And as there's updates coming, you guys will be updated. With that, I'd like to start the presentation. So this is our agenda for tonight for the presentation. Hopefully it'll take about maybe 35 minutes to go through this. I'll go over the project introduction. I'll do a quick background on this project. I'll address the crash history, a quick overview. Then I'll hand it to Lisa, who's going to go over the proposed improvements, as well as the process on how we determine where we will and where we won't allow U-turns or left and U-turns. Lisa will go over the access control benefits, proper impacts, and then I'll conclude with the project schedule, as well as upcoming meetings, public outreach, and then, like I said, we'll do a Q&A or breakout afterwards. So this stage 2 project, just a quick introduction, and I'll go over that a little bit more in the next couple of slides, but this corridor has some serious safety concerns. There's a lot of accidents. Lisa's team developed a 3-year accident history, and there's high collisions throughout. Basically, on the whole 2.5 mile corridor, there's accidents happening throughout. And as a note, that's in parentheses right there. It's actually one of the highest statewide accident rates for similar state routes in the whole state. And obviously, they vary in types of collisions, but there's a lot of serious injury collisions, and that's the next bullet there in terms of goal. That's the main intent of our main goal of this project, is to reduce all these crashes. For vehicles, but then also for active transportation crashes as well. There's a lot of pedestrian and bicycle accidents happening, and I'll elaborate a little bit more afterwards. Since when have we been looking at this project? Actually, in 2017, there was a sub-area plan that was created on Highway 99, and that kind of started this whole concept, or we started looking into more detail into this project. And then once that was completed, we did a Highway 99 stage 1 project, which is pretty similar. That's where we hired SCJ, Lisa's team, and that's when they came up with an estimate of how much it would cost to do a full-blown improvements on the whole corridor, similar to what Shoreline did with new sidewalks, capacity improvements, a raised median, utility improvements, but the cost was pretty high. So for that reason, we decided to address the main safety issues, which is what we're addressing in stage 2 with the raised median project. Because we don't have the whole Highway 99 concept. The whole full blown was about $184 million, which that would take many years to secure that kind of funding. And this is a safety, a priority that needs to be addressed right away. So for that reason, we brought up this project. And we do have, like the last parentheses, we do have some secured funding through Connecting Washington funds for this whole project in terms of the design and the construction. Next slide, please. A lot of you guys might already be pretty familiar with this whole the limits of this project, but just a quick overview right here. So we're looking to do this on the bottom side of your of the picture on the right side. So from the south end, from 244th all the way to 210th, which is the northern end within Edmonds. You can see in the yellow areas there that are delineated. Those are the different agencies or different jurisdictions that are along the corridor as well. It's not just an Edmonds corridor. There's, as Lisa shows there's Esperance, which is Snohomish County. So we have to coordinate with Snohomish County. Then on the east side of the corridor, south of 216th is Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace. So there's the southern end, just north of 220th is Mount Lake Terrace. And then as you go further north, then it slices to Linwood, and they have it all the way to the northern end of the corridor. So there's definitely some coordination that we're doing with this project with those agencies. And then on the south end, you have SR 104 interchange and then just showing that there are some important active transportation corridors within proximity of the project. You have the interurban trail. This is actually the blue line that's shown on your line. That's it ranges from less than a quarter of a mile from the corridor, mainly on most of the stretch. And then obviously you also have the light rail, future light rail, Mount Lake Terrace transit station, which is currently being built. So by 2024, that will be a completed project, and that's going to generate a lot of, well, not only traffic, but also a lot of active transportation users. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to show you, like I said before, there's a lot of accidents. We're starting on the south end, and I'm not going to go in details on all of those, on all these accidents that are shown, but yeah, basically all those dots they're shown is an accident, and the colors and then the shape, it depends on the severity as well as the type of collision, whether it was two cars that crashed from opposite direction, or were they rear end collisions, as well as pedestrians. I mean, you see the yellow ones; those are pedestrian collisions in the last 3 years, or actually from 2016 to 2019. That's when Lisa's team ran the accident reports or the accident history. And then as you go further north, I mean, you can see there's a series of accidents, whether it's at the intersections or the mid blocks between the intersections, whether it's a signalized intersection or a non-signalized intersection. It's pretty much, it's not the same number throughout, but there's accidents happening everywhere. So that's why we want to make it a whole corridor improvement. We're not just trying to address just a short stretch of the corridor. We want to do the whole 2.5 miles. And then Lisa, we're like near the northern end right there, and as you can see, it's on the north end. There's a lot of accidents throughout within that 84-foot curb to curb space. There's accidents throughout. And then the next slide, it's going to show you this slide right here is basically a summary of all those accidents. And it shows you on the bottom left corner right there, it shows you the severity. And well, before I move on, actually the top, oh yes, you got about 7.52 crashes per million miles traveled, and that's the one it's really, like I said before in the intro, it's a lot higher than most state routes throughout in all of Washington State. That's a really high rate, and that's why the state is definitely supportive of this project as well. Just going a quick overview of those tables. It shows you there's been about in 2017, 18, and 19, there's about 200 accidents per year on an annual basis, which is about a little over 650 in a 3-year period. So if you average that out on a daily basis, there's about a crash almost every other day. Every 2 to 3 days, there's a crash somewhere on the corridor. So that's just to show you the magnitude of the issue. And then on the top right, you have the types of crashes. You have a lot of rear ends, side swipes, enter at an angle. The ones that are higher severity are the ones where you have from opposite direction. And I'll go over that in the next slide. That's where cars are going. The speed limit's 45, so sometimes they're going 50 miles an hour, and those are there hasn't been a fatality in that 3-year period, but there's been a lot of serious accidents. And then and it also shows you the pedestrian and bicycle accidents. So there's been about 22 total in the last 3 years. And then the bottom right, the table 3 there has been 2 fatalities. There's been a good amount of serious injuries as well. So we were trying to address that with this project as well. Next slide, please. And this is the one I was showing you in terms of opposite direction. That's where, what's happening here is, if you look at the diagram on the left, imagine we're at a signalized intersection. There's northbound traffic approaching a signalized intersection. They're on a red light. Then there's a queue that starts building up. Obviously, they can't go. What's happening is the vehicles that are right, and then there's a left turn vehicle in the opposite direction that's trying to make a left turn into a driveway most of the time. What's happening is the 2 vehicles in the general purpose lanes, they leave a gap. They call it a courtesy gap. They're telling the V1 that's shown right there, the left turner, oh yeah, you can go ahead. I'm on a red light, so I'm not going anywhere. So I'll give you a gap to make it more efficient. Go ahead, make that turn. However, what's happening is the car in the V1 is not seeing the car in the V2, and the car in the V2 is going they're in the bad lane. So in the outside lane, which is not for through vehicles, just for throughs when it's a bus that's going through the signal. But their side lines are really, they can't see each other. So V1 and V2 they can't see each other at all. And V1 is going thinking, yeah, it's clear. And that's what's creating the serious accidents, because that V2 car is going at probably, like I said, 40 to 50 miles an hour, because the signal is still it could be 300 or 400 feet at least or more. So they're braking a little bit, but they're still at a good speed. So that's one of the main ones we're trying to eliminate, get rid of all these serious injury collisions. And this project that Lisa is going to go into more details after would address a lot of those. The diagram on the right is just to show you by what we're looking to propose. We're going to remove a lot of conflicts. There's a lot of conflicts with all these left turn, right turns, and then conflicts with other movements. We're going to remove a lot of these. And as you can see, just with one driveway, there's about all those dots are conflict points between 2 movements where the cars could collide into each other. There's about 15 on the top diagram. So this is that's every single driveway. That's the number of conflict points. We're gonna obviously reduce a lot of these conflict points by installing this raised median. But with the raised median, you're just with that driveway, you're going down to only 8 conflict points. So you're reducing that single driveway with 8 conflict points, plus as well as all the access points that we're eliminating. It's a lot higher. I mean, we didn't run through all at least we can maybe go over that later, but if you multiply that by however many drivers are located, that's a huge number of reductions. I think from there, Lisa, I think you're taking over from here.
Okay, thanks, Bertrand. Let's see. So I'm going to talk to you about the proposed improvements. And there's really three different categories of improvements that we want to share with you. The first is the installation of a raised median, raised landscaped median along the entire corridor with mid-block left turn pockets. So there's left and U-turn pockets at the signalized intersections. We'll talk about that, and also at unsignalized intersections for the most part. And then we looked at the mid-blocks, but this raised median is intended to for access control is what we call it, but it's intended to control where we can make left-hand turns, which improves a lot of those accidents Bertrand was just talking about by reducing the number of conflict points. The second big element of the improvements is a pedestrian actuated signal crossing. I'll show you where that's being proposed and a couple options for that. And finally, we're looking at adding gateway signage on each end of the project limits. So that would be signs welcoming drivers to the City of Edmonds. So this is kind of a plan view looking down on the road of what a landscape median would look like, and kind of shows you the different zones here. There's a spot here next to a lane where we've got a curb, and then as it starts to widen out, and these are 6-inch curbs here, as it starts to widen out, we have some treated landscaping or treated hardscaping in here that we're proposing, and then we start to gradually add bushes and shrubs as we get a little bit wider. And then when we get wide enough, we actually raise the median 18 inches. So it's not just a 6-inch curb, it's an 18-inch curb. And then we can put trees in the median. And we have to do that behind the raised median because we want to prevent people from running into those mature trees. And to do that, we need to have a little higher curb height. This is the existing cross section of the road, and it's actually showing you from the face of this curb to the face of this curb over here. It's 84 feet of pavement, and that's pretty typical throughout the entire corridor. And you're pretty used to seeing this, but in each direction you've got 2 lanes of traffic, and then you've got what Bertrand referred to as the BAT lane, but the business access and transit lane. So you're either making a right at a signal or intersection, or into a business, or you're continuing through if you're a bus. And same over here. We aren't changing anything from these curbs out, with the exception of the hawk signal. So all of the work is proposed is going to be here in the median. And this shows you kind of a profile view of what this raised median would look like. So it's a little bit higher in comparison to the cars. We've got this 2 feet distance, so we call it shy distance, but to prevent vehicles from clipping that curb. And then when we're 18 inches high, we can put in trees. This is a lower section with lower shrubs and curbs, and we actually have a 6-inch curb. This is usually in a transition zone when we're transitioning out to the 10-foot width. And then this shows where we've actually got a left turn pocket, whether we're at an intersection or mid-block. Going in one direction, we'll have a left turn pocket, and then we end up with just a really narrow 1-foot curb next to that. This picture we put together real quick, but it's a quick rendering to show you what the before and the after will look like. And this was taken just south of Doug's Linwood Mazda, looking south. There's kind of a new development where they'd put in some new curbs and trees there. What we showed is trees along the median, spaced at about 30 foot on center with some lower shrubs, and then kind of trees on the outside, which we aren't putting in on this project. But as development occurs, we are putting those in, and that kind of will continue all the way down the corridor. And it's not rendered all the way down the corridor because you can't really see it, but gives you an idea of what it would look like in the scale of the project. So the next thing I'm going to talk about was the process to locate left and U-turns. So we put the curb in, the median in the middle, and then we had to determine where we put left turns and U-turns. So the first thing we did is we added left and U-turns at all signalized intersections. So there's existing signals at 244th, 238th, 228th, 224th, 220th, 216th, and 212th. And at each one of those intersections, they can make left turns and U-turns out of that left turn pocket. And the length of those pockets is determined by our projection of traffic in the future year, and looking at how many cars we expect to make left turns and U-turns, specifically at each intersection. So some of those are shorter, some are longer. And we refer to that as kind of a queue as the line, or a storage length. And then we added left turn and U-turns at non-signalized intersections. And I say initially, so the first thing we did is we laid them out at all the non-signalized intersections. Then we looked at mid-block crossings. And to do that, we know that U-turn spacing has to be a minimum of 600 feet apart, based on where we have these intersections laid out. So we looked for spaces where we were at least 600 feet away. And then the left turns and U-turns can't conflict with the cues of a left turn or through movements that they're crossing over. So in that drawing that Bertrand showed, where there's the courtesy gap and people are crossing over that, we don't want to go across where they're stopped for a signal, because that causes that one accident, and we want to avoid that. And finally, they can't be located where there's already significant crash history. So we colored up a map to kind of show where those spaces were and where the opportunities were to add mid blocks. And we came up with 3 of them that we could add. And I'm not sure if I have that on a slide, but one turns into northbound into Doug's Linwood Mazda. One turns southbound into CarMax, and another one turns southbound into the Pacific Park Apartments. And then the last thing we did is we reviewed the non-signalized intersections and removed some that were really low volumes and relatively closely spaced together. So for instance, and it really happens between 230th and 234th and 236th, we have a couple of locations where adding left turns at all of those, they're all really low volume. So we made like the last one that you reach, the U-turn, and took them out in between. And I'll show you that as we go along. So this is kind of the drawing of what we came up with. We marked up in orange the signalized intersections. We marked up in blue non-signalized intersections, which don't occur here. We put the 600-foot spacing in green. And then the area that was left gave us an opportunity. And I said, like, if we were to let a left turn queue through here, or left turn pocket through here going northbound, it would conflict with these storage lengths for both the through movement and the left turn pocket. So we couldn't do one northbound. And if we did one southbound, we'd have to break this left turn pocket, and we're not allowed to do that. So we didn't do that either. But the other pieces of the other elements we looked at were these crashes at each one to see which ones had high crash histories. So we laid something similar out this for the whole corridor to try and consistently and systemically lay out mid blocks that made sense for the corridor without and followed a set of rules so that we could be consistent without giving preferential treatment to anybody. And so here we go. These are the proposed improvements. And so this starts down at the south end of the project. And so this is the City of Shoreline over here at 205th, starts 244th. And for the most part, the channelization in this corridor is the same. And then we kind of widen out. And when we get out to a little wider spot, we're going to put some curbs in instead of stripes. We can start to landscape it and install trees. We can't do anything in here for mid blocks because of the SR 104 interchange on that section. And then as we continued north, we put left turns into 240th, both directions. And so both of these turns can make a left turn or a U-turn to come back for a driveway they've missed. Note, when we do that on the non-signalized intersections, we do prevent left turns out of the intersections. So now if you wanted to come out of 240th and make a left turn, you'd have to make a right turn, make your next U-turn to effectively go left, or take other streets. There's often several opportunities to work your way around. So this is 240th, and then 238th is a signalized intersection. So we just laid these out with pocket lengths that were designed for the future traffic. And as you work your way up from 238 to 236, this is one location where we had looked at the northbound left here and a southbound left here. And we decided that we would take out this northbound left because it was really low volumes. And we were going to put one in right here at 234th. So if you needed to get to say Dollar Tree, you just have to go up a little bit further to 234th. And those are about 600 feet apart. And then in here, we have all the trees kind of shown. Same treatment as at 240th, at 236. So you can't make a left out, but you can make a right out of the intersections. And then at 234th, it's kind of the same thing, except this time we kept the northbound left. And this is where that new construction is for the new residential apartment. But we didn't have a southbound left because you could make that right here at 236, then just come back a little bit further. And then we kind of have a long stretch between 234th and 230th at the next intersection. And this is where we proposed to put a pedestrian signal. And sometimes we call it a hawk signal because that's one of the options we have to put in. I'll talk about those in just a second, but we have a crossing and we have 2 transit stops right here. And I'll show you those a little bit more, but we lined it up with the transit stops. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then this is the first mid-block crossing that we get to, that we put in that doesn't happen at an intersection or a non-signalized intersection, is this southbound left into the Pacific Park apartment homes. And that was just kind of fit really well. As you can see, we're kind of between intersections. So we met that spacing requirement and we don't get into the queues for intersection signals. So we went ahead and put in the southbound one. I'm looking at the next street at 230th, we have a northbound left in. And again, you can make U-turns at all of these too. So it prevents the left turns out of that intersection, but allows you to make a left or a U-turn here to get back to businesses. And then we come up here to 228th, where we just fit those left turn pockets to the future volumes. And then continuing through 228th, same thing, you got a left turn pocket on the other side. And this is where 76th Avenue is. And you know, you can't cross there anyway. There's an existing raised median for a portion of this. And we are going to modify that raised median a bit to add landscaping in there. We're not sure if we'll take it out completely or just modify it, but we feel like we should add landscaping consistent with the rest of the corridor there. And so we're in front of Ranch Market at 224th, again, as a left turn at the signal, U-turn at the signal. Coming southbound at that same intersection, there's a left turn and a U-turn at the signal. And then this kind of long block between 224th and 220th, we looked at kind of this mid-block location and providing mid-block turns. And the northbound one made sense because we have some businesses back here that, you know, we'd like to be able to get to. It met all the spacing requirements. But when we put in the southbound one, there was, Bertrand, I think it was 36 accidents right here. We felt like that was too close to the ends of the queues for the signal, the next signal down. And with that high of an accident rate, we felt like that was one we should not keep open. So we didn't put a southbound mid-block turn here. And then again, you're working your way up to a signal at 220th. So you have the left turn pockets at 220th. And as you guys know, 220th and 216th and 212th operations are a lot slower than further south on the corridor. So you see that kind of commensurate with longer left turn pockets. And again, left turn and U-turn pockets. We have a little bit of landscaping and we get right into the backs right into the left turn pocket at 216th. So that block, we really didn't have any spacing to put in a mid-block turn. Then between 216th and 220th, about midway was right here. And we southbound put the left turn into CarMax. And although it only serves the CarMax on this side, all the businesses over here can make that U-turn to effectively go left. We did not put a northbound mid-block crossing in again, and that was because there was about 17 accidents here. We felt like that was not safe enough of a location for us to put a mid-block crossing in, and it started to conflict with some of it got close to the through queues, which is kind of what causes that, is that courtesy gap that Bertrand talked about. And then at the end of the project, we have another left turn U-turn at 212 and a southbound left turn U-turn at 212. And then we have a little island at the top, and this is about 210th. So if your address is your 21000, right at this area, and that's where the city limits end. The second element we talked about was the pedestrian signal. And so just looking at this in a little bit more detail, this is 234th and we're about 600 feet north of there. We're putting in a crosswalk. And then when you get to the median, you actually have to turn this way and come across the crosswalk. And so if you're walking from this side, from the east side to the west side, you'd cross the crosswalk and then you turn and you walk a little bit before you go across the crosswalk again. And the reason we do that is because it forces pedestrians to turn and face the oncoming traffic and take a look. You'd be amazed how many pedestrian accidents the pedestrian gets cited for not paying attention. So that helps that a little bit. And we would take a transit stop that's in front of that new development, move it up here. And then there's already an existing transit stop here. So when the bus, the 101 bus stops, you'd be able to use this to get to and from those transit stops, which is pretty handy. And then there's two options for this signal. One of them is a half signal. And frankly, most of you won't notice the difference between a half signal and a different type of pedestrian signal. It's just like a regular traffic signal. The second option is to put in what we call a hawk signal, which is a high intensity activated crosswalk. But this works for bikes and peds, and it's only activated when they push the button or get on a bicycle actuated detector. It's usually used at mid-block crossings, so not at signalized intersections. And best practice is to have it a half mile from existing intersections, which in this case we are. And it's also between those two relocated cross stops we showed you. But basic function of this is that when you're driving along and no pedestrians are there, it's black, so you don't have to do anything. And then when a pedestrian actuates the button, it starts flashing yellow. And when you come up to a flashing yellow light, you're supposed to slow down and prepare to stop as it goes solid. And then you stop when you see a red ball. And that's pretty normal. And then it starts to flash into red. And when it's flashing red, that's like a flashing stop sign, right? So you have to look first and then you can go. The advantage to this is that if you have that 84-foot crossing across the street, if the pedestrians get through your half of the street and they're safely across it, you can then proceed. Where with a half signal, we have to hold traffic till the pedestrians get all the way across the street. But this use is less conventional. There's a couple in the city of Edmonds already on 104 and 524, but the traffic signal down in Shoreline that is for pedestrians is a half signal, so regular kind of signal operation. The last element, we're getting to the end here, is gateway signs. So these are just some example gateway signs. These are in no way representative of what is getting designed. In fact, the city just got the designer on board in this last month. But approximate locations on the north side of the project is up around 212th Street. So somewhere near the Toyota dealership as you come into Edmonds driving southbound. On the south side of the street, somewhere around 244th. So you've got Shoreline on one side of the street, Edmonds on the other side of the street. And that would be out in front of probably the Campbell Nelson dealership or somewhere near that for traffic going northbound. And again, they're not designed right now. We're just giving examples of some types. And there's actually a public task force that's been put together with members of the community, as well as Parks Department and city employees to work on the designs of these. So last thing, I'm just going to hit this and really quick, but the summary of left turn and U-turn locations, they're allowed at all signalized intersections. So every signalized intersection you come up to, you can make a left turn and a U-turn. They're allowed at most non-signalized intersections, and this actually lists them at at 240th, it's both directions. 236th, it's southbound, 234th, it's northbound, and 230th, it's northbound. And it's already prohibited at 76, so it'll stay that way. And then there's some mid-block openings, and there's one between 234th and 230th, regardless of what that says. There's one into Doug's Linwood Mazda, and there's one southbound into CarMax. We looked at this one into the community health center, and it was too close to have U-turns, and it also conflicted with the 600-foot spacing. So last thing, there's been a lot of studies on roads like this, kind of before and after studies, where we look at two-way left turn lanes with a handful of through lane type of corridors, and how they operate with the two-way left turn lane. That's that center lane that they have now versus putting a median in. And what we found is that it reduces the vehicle crash rates by about 37%, and even more so the injury rate. So the injury severity goes down by like 48%. So a serious accident may become a property damage only accident when we have this two-way left turn lane in there. And that's because of the predictability of where cars are making a left turn. And you now know where they are, and we've put them in safer locations. More so, it reduces pedestrian related crashes by 45% and pedestrian fatalities by 78%. So if you just did the statistics, we'd save a life by putting this in. So we had 2 pedestrian fatalities on this corridor. It improves the flow of traffic. If you think about that two-way left turn lane being like a piece of sandpaper to traffic, it creates a lot of friction with people coming into and out of that lane. And when you take that away and put a median in, traffic tends to flow a little bit better. Not necessarily faster, but flows better between intersections, and there's less stop and go. The redevelopment around corridors that have been, you call it beautified, tends to increase property values for adjacent properties. There's no impact on the demand for goods and services. So if somebody wanted a car yesterday or a cheeseburger yesterday, they still want the car and the cheeseburger today. And what they found is through surveys with the public driving it, a majority of drivers have no problem making U-turns to get to businesses on the opposite side of the road. So it's actually, pretty user friendly in the end. And if you guys want to see some streets that are going to look like what we're planning to put in, the easiest one is to look at Shoreline, SR 99 and Shoreline, but also SR 522. And these pictures down here represent these ones. There's a couple state routes in Linwood and Mukilteo, 522 in Kenmore and Bothell, and then SR 99 all the way from Burien, SeaTac, Des Moines, Canton, Federal Way has all been installing these raised medians with landscaping in them. Bertrand, is this one mine too?
Yeah.
Okay, so the property owner impacts, like I said, we're between the curbs. We're not really doing anything except in the median. So there's really minor right-of-way takes required at the Hawk signal at 234th, just for signal equipment. And then where we locate those gateway signs on both ends of the project limits, we're going to need to take a little bit of right-of-way from somebody. There's going to be some driveway access impacts. It'll provide safer access to and from the driveways. Left turn access will be provided at all signalized and most unsignalized intersections and at mid-block openings. And U-turns will be allowed at all the signalized intersections. So actually, if we updated some stuff here just recently, any turn on the corridor, you can ignore this last sentence here in parentheses, anywhere you can turn left on the corridor, you're going to be able to make a U-turn. So it won't be like a puzzle you have to figure out. You'll just know you can make both. With that, I'll hand it back to Bertrand.
Thanks, Lisa. This current site right there, it basically shows just to give you a quick idea of what's our project schedule. We started this stage 2 project back in last summer, last August, and right now in February of this year, we're about in the 30% design right now. So our preliminary engineering has been completed, and now we're just starting the design. The 30% it's going to be submitted in the next couple weeks. We also been working with WashDOT, the state, because we got to get all these improvements will have to get approved by WashDOT. So we're working with them on that. Environmental documentation is starting as well. Like Lisa just mentioned, there's some right of way, so that has started as well, for the Hawk as well as upcoming for the Gateway signs. And then our goal is our current schedule is to finish the design and at the end of this fall or September, October timeframe. And that's all. If you go to the bottom of that slide, our goal is to advertise this project at the end of this year. Usually it's a good time to advertise. It's usually in the December. That's when the contractors are looking for work for next year. So it's a perfect timing. We'd want to start the construction early next year. Like I said in the introduction, all our design and construction is all the funding has been secured. So we're not applying for grants or anything. We're ready to go as soon as design actually and right away as well. All that the entire project is secured funding. And then just a couple of those little circles in that chart right here. Like I said before, also we've had there's a couple of other agencies are involved in this corridor. So that's the agency stakeholder meetings. Sorry, I bumped on that one. I went a little faster. Going back up, we had a couple of property owner meetings in December and January of this year. We actually had there was a total of like 10 meetings. They were all Zoom meetings. We just try to divide into different segments so we don't have too many people at each meeting. Then we also had a task force meeting. That's more for the gateway and the raised median, the landscaping, talking about what we wanted to do there. So there's some upcoming meetings that aren't actually shown in this diagram, but there'll be some more meetings with that task force. I already touched on the agency, PPW, and then CC. Is just to keep our council updated on the project. We had one a couple weeks ago, actually, a council meeting and a committee meeting. And there's a couple more coming up later this year when we're more in the 90 or almost, once the design is almost completed, just give an update on the project. Open house, obviously the first one is today. And then we will have one, just like for any other big capital projects, we usually have one at the early stages, like in the 30% design, just like right now. And then one in the latter stages, once the project once the design is almost completed. So right now it's in October, we have it in November, but it might be a little earlier, depending on how far we are with the design at that point. Next slide, please. I kind of touched on most of these, so we don't have to, there's not much, this stuff I just talked about on the last slide, so you can skip that one. And this is just, obviously to access this open house, you guys went on to this website. It has a lot more information about the entire project. Like I said before, we'll add the survey on that open house link if you click on the one that's shown right here. And yeah, if you guys can provide input to that, or if there's also information on the whole project from start to where we are right now. So that's a good way to get all the information. Also, there's our contact information on there too. On the next slide, please. Yeah, and I like to, I was actually looking at the chat. There hasn't been any questions. I didn't mention that initially. You guys could have put some questions there, but I don't see, there was only one question which we already responded to. I see there's about 35% participants. There's about 10 from the project team. So we're trying to, I think we might be able to keep this into one group. Let's see how that works initially. And then if there's, obviously, if we're not, just one more thing is if we're not able to address all the questions today, we'll definitely, you guys have my contact information right there on that slide. You can always reach out to me, but the way we're gonna do this is if you can, Lisa has the control, but if you can raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll just go, we'll go like that to start with and see how that works. So now we'll let you guys raise your hand, and if you have any specific questions, go for it.
Was that a new question that just popped up in the chat, Bertrand, about the funding?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a good, yeah, that just came up. So we can start with that. There's a question that just came up. What is the budget for phase 2 project and how is it fully funded? So I can answer that question. Actually, right now, Lisa is establishing at the 30% level, we're getting a cost estimate for this project. So I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that we, like I said in my introduction, well, I don't remember if I said the total amount, but we secured $10 million from Connecting Washington. And this project will be under that amount. So it's totally fully funded. I can't tell you the exact amount, but it's going to be less than that for the design, construction, design right away and construction. Another question just came up.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You have a couple
Oh, that's
hands,
fine.
or at least one hand. up.
Are there
Yeah.
any? Okay. Well,
So
let me just
Norma has her hand up.
go
Norma,
to
why
the one
don't
that's on the
you?
chat, and then we'll go to the one
Okay.
that you can open up.
There we go. Do you have the second chat one?
Yes.
Oh,
it
okay. I thought
says,
you
is
were
there
telling me to
any,
go. Sorry.
is there any process for appealing where the left-hand turn lanes are designed, or is that finalized? No, it's not finalized. You've seen the benefit of our thinking on it so far, and we've spent a fair amount of time on it. But that's why we're conducting, one of the reasons why we're conducting meetings like this is to get comments, and they are welcome. I wouldn't necessarily call it an appeal, but you know, if there's information we haven't presented, it could be because we don't know about it. So please get your comments into us and let us consider them.
Okay, Norma has her hand up. Norma, you'll have to unmute and then ask your question.
Thank you. I had a question about 236th and 234th. I got a little bit lost there on why it's at 234th and not at 236th. And I might not even understand where it is. So can you explain that?
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Thank you. I was cooking dinner, so I wasn't really watching.
no, that's fine. So this will render here in a second. As you come north, up the corridor, and I know it's all blurry right now, but it'll zap in here while I'm talking. As we come north up the corridor, if we considered putting lefts in and lefts out at 236th, 234th, and actually 230th. See if I can see all three of them in one shot. There's 230th way down here. And especially in this one spot, what we found was there's just really low volumes because we took some traffic counts turning left into these. So what we did is if you were driving northbound, we made the second one you got to, the second intersection you got to, the left and U-turn. So you could get these businesses and you could get any down here that you might have been able to make down here. So if you were turning at 236th, you could still collect all those businesses and access them all. And the same thing going southbound, we use the second intersection for the left turn and U-turn so that you can access these businesses as well as anything you could have accessed when you went to 234th. By doing that, we didn't need quite as many openings, and we didn't have to try and justify to WashDOT why we put in some left turns that were volumes that were like 10 cars.
Okay, and that didn't have anything to do with the number of accidents at those two places, right?
At those two locations, it did not,
Okay,
because
thank
those
you.
are the non-signalized intersections.
Sure, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, here, Lisa, there's a couple in the chat, so this one's pretty fast, the first one right here. I need to be clear about the intersection of 238 into Safeway. Will there be northbound left turns from 99 onto 238 and from 238 onto Highway 99? If not, what is the projected community impact and potential to mitigate a food desert if Safeway closes? Oh yeah, and Lisa can she can put that on there. But yeah, the left turns from Highway 99 on 238 at the signal. They're being maintained. We're not removing that.
Yeah, we only made,
those movements.
yeah, we only made the restriction for left turns coming out of the cross streets at non-signalized intersections. So all the signalized intersections will operate the same way they do now.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Mark Ikigami, if you can unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much. So we were part of the Shoreline project. One of our stores is there. And they did, as you pointed out, something very similar. One of the challenges that happened after the construction is that the medians were not well maintained. The city had a lot of challenges with trying to maintain it themselves, and then subcontractors trying to do it. But what happened is they would become overgrown, and where these U-turns were, it actually blocked the visibility, and it became a hazard. So just wanted to know, does the city have a good plan to maintain those medians?
I might comment on that. Let's just say we're developing a plan. We've had several conversations with our Parks Department who are, I think, up to the challenge. There may need to be some changes in our budgeted allotments going forward. This is a big project. I'm trying to remember what the current tree count is. Lisa, it's 140 trees along this corridor. Plus,
yeah, real close, plus or minus.
yeah, plus approximately 45,000 square feet of ground cover that's proposed. And it's a hard decision to make because we're well aware of the struggle Shoreline has had maintaining a median in the middle of a state highway. It's not easy. We showed you a few examples earlier of other places it's being done, perhaps better in some than others. But you're right, there's got to be a commitment going forward to maintain it. Otherwise, the aesthetic benefits that will come from it will be lost if you don't take care of it. So it's something we have to step up to. I think the design team and the city council and the mayor and past mayors have believed that the benefits from having a well-maintained landscaped median, including the safety benefits, but going beyond that to the aesthetic benefits, are important enough that it's worth that additional effort and investment.
Oh, I agree, definitely. Where we sit at our Mazda and Hyundai store, we see an accident or so a week, and in pretty severe accidents. So I'm 100% supportive. If I could I ask one more question?
Yes.
Okay, so during construction, and this will be, I think, much less intrusive to our business than the Shoreline project because it doesn't involve the sidewalks. But during construction, what sort of plan is there to allow access to the dealerships? Will there not, or to the different properties where these turn lanes are proposed as they're being built? Obviously, there won't be any access. So will there be temporary U-turns or will those be set up prior to the construction starting?
I'm going to take your question as a comment, and the comment would be, do everything we can to maintain business access during construction. Now, that's a mantra that we always do adopt. There are limits to that, as you probably experienced in Shoreline, especially so when you're working on the frontage improvements. And I don't know that we've mentioned it so far, but keep in mind this median project is the biggest step forward from a safety standpoint, but the frontage improvements are also planned to be replaced, but over a fairly long period of time, we think, which will be limited by funding availability. But at some point, those will be done as well. And so, yeah, you're escaping that impact for now, but this project will be done next year. And then after that, we'll be looking to pick out the first of 7 stages along the corridor that we would want to work with property owners and lessees to improve the frontage improvements. I can't give you a lot of detail on that at this point, but you'll see that going forward. This project, relatively speaking, will be easier to build, probably have less impact on adjacent businesses than one where you try to do all of it at the same time. But details on that to follow. I think it's a great comment to make, and we'll be thinking about that a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to add one thing on regarding to your first question in terms of the vegetation. I mean, one thing we'll be looking at is definitely the sight distance from every point of view, so that the least amount of vegetation. We're gonna try to keep it as low as possible, and obviously there's some maintenance, but we're gonna definitely look at all the site triangles to make sure that even if it's not maintained, that won't be a sight distance issue. That's how we're gonna determine where the vegetation will be placed.
Yeah, and we've
Um,
already preliminarily picked up a list of plants that will, what our goal is to pick up plants that are gonna look great, but also choke out the weeds. So plant them dense enough that they don't allow the weeds to grow, and really looking for some solutions to all of that problem before we even get started.
Yeah, grasses are probably out. They look great, but they require a good deal of maintenance. So things that would grow tall. Now the trees themselves, for example, what's on the screen there at 236, that southbound left turn pocket, if if the trees aren't placed right or done right, they could be something of a sight issue on that inside lane. So those are all details. It's good to point that out. We will be thinking about that when we get into detailed design.
It looks like Roger has a question.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I had similar concerns about the level of maintenance that we can expect here after seeing the problems that occur down in Shoreline, and I'm glad that's high on the city's radar. Do you expect to install irrigation in the planted areas of the corridor?
The simple answer to that is yes, we do. We aren't sure. We're really going to look towards natural landscaping, and so hopefully we only have to run that for the first couple of years for plant establishment, and we're hoping that we'd only have to use it in severe years after that.
Okay, but it will be there.
It will be there.
Yeah.
Okay. My last question is, are there any utility issues in the SR 99 right away under the areas that will be in your improved median? Will we have to be digging it up at some point in the future to deal with the utility repairs or replacements?
No.
So I'll take that one. Yeah, we did look at all the utilities along the whole corridor. We've also talked to Olympic View, Water and Sewer District, and there's no upgrades necessary in the near future anywhere on the.
Okay, thank you.
There will be on the follow-on project, Roger. There is utility work to be done on Highway 99, but out in the center median, we're able to escape most of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? You can just click on raise your hand and.
I got a couple. Well, Lisa, there's a couple in the chat, so let me read
Okay,
those.
go for it, Parker.
There was a couple that came last. Make sure I'm skipping. Okay. This is from Mr. Hedges. It appears there's no left turn from southbound Highway 99 to 230th. So if you can scroll to that, Lisa. Is that in fact true? We are with Miller's Rental, and large trucks and trailers need to be able to get into our driveway. So if you can go to 230th and.
Are you right here where it says Riley? Oh, right.
No,
Right.
No, they're
right.
further north.
Just
Miller's
north
Rental.
of 230th,
Oh, I see.
Miller's Rental.
There you go. So if you wanted to get there, I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me close this real quick. If they were going northbound, obviously they just turn into your driveway. coming southbound to make a U-turn, they'd just come down to this mid-block crossing. So a little bit further than 230th and make a U-turn. The question will be how big a trailer they have. It might be easier for them to come around to the next signal.
Lisa, would you describe the how these were sized and what rating of truck they're really built for?
They're built for a single unit truck, so like a U-Haul pickup, a long U-Haul truck for the most part, and a passenger vehicle. They're not necessarily made for semi type of trucks. We could look, and we probably should look for you guys. Just we can model a trailer on a car. Most trailers follow the car around, but sometimes a U-turn's too sharp for them. We could take a quick look at that. I think that's probably the best answer is we can see how you'd make a U-turn to get down here where you are.
Go to the next one. Has planning at this point considered potential increases in bike and pedestrian traffic crossing 99 to access the new light rail station, which seems likely to occur on 228th? So when we did the 228th signal installation a couple years ago, well, it's probably been maybe 5 or 6 now already. But on that one, yeah, we did add bike lanes, and we have some we have video detection. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure we already have bike detection on these approaches. If not, that's a simple addition, especially, yeah. I mean, we can do it right now. We just have to add some zones to that system so that, yeah, bikes would be detected as they're approaching the intersection. And then, yeah, especially with like you said, with the new light rail station, there'll definitely be a significant increase in bike activity on this 228th corridor. So yeah, it's not including this project, but it's a simple task that we can do internally in our engineering department. And let me see if there's a couple more. I don't know, Lisa, do you have any raised hands right now, or others? I'll keep going on the chat.
There's a couple.
No, Norma and Mark still
Oh.
have their hands up, but that's just
Oh.
lingering. No, you're
All right.
still good to go.
Okay, cool. Will you, the city, manage construction, or will this be done by the designer or construction management team? So, we'll have some, obviously we'll advertise the project. Our contractor is going to bid for this project. Then we'll select the appropriate contractor. The city will be involved. Obviously, we'll have some inspectors. The city will also hire a consultant due to the size of this project and then the duration as well. We'll have to hire some consultants as well to help the city with the documentation as well as the inspections. And then Lisa's team as the designer, they'll also be involved if there's some specific questions from the contractor. If we can't answer the question, we'll definitely go to Lisa's team and they'll provide answers to the contractor questions.
I might just summarize that it's a combination of city management. There will definitely be a single city project manager assigned to this project that'll shepherd it throughout construction. And we will also hire outside help to do that because there's a lot of work in all of that, particularly a project funded with federal money. And yeah, we'll get help from the outside, but the single source of responsibility is the city. Now, sometimes on a day-to-day basis, most contractors are really good about answering questions of adjacent businesses and getting to know people that are working in these buildings and listening to their concerns. Those get reported up to the city and solutions end up getting crafted. And I think it's worked really well on most of our transportation projects that way.
Okay, another question. Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, Bertrand. No, go ahead.
What is the thought process behind not permitting a pocket left in a high collision area. Would a more defined left turn mitigate many of the collision points? Lisa, you want to
So-
address that one?
Yeah, yeah. So some of it's indicative of other issues that already exist. So some of it were already interrupting queues. And so I told you, let me go back to the intersection here. See if I can find one here. Trying to find a good example for you. Okay, so here's one where we did actually put in the Dougs, and there's a couple of accidents here. But here on this side, if we put a left into here, kind of coming southbound, we were looking at what we would have, and there's a 400-foot queue, so we're not in the left turn pocket, but this queue for the through lanes extends all the way back to the next signal. And that's where you get that courtesy gap that Bertrand was talking about. So it's a little bit of that, but the best way for us to determine where the accidents were or where that's happening was to look at the existing accidents. And so that combined with the through queue, we aren't breaking through those. And the fact that there's what, 35, 36 crashes just right here that are of the type that we can prevent was really kind of the methodology. And it really only happened in a couple of locations. I think the two locations I pointed out to you, it happened there. And then northbound, it happened at this CarMax where there's 15 accidents on this other side if we went northbound. So we only went southbound here.
I couldn't unmute myself fast enough when I was going to ask if you could go to this intersection. That was actually the one I was interested in, the one in northbound left into between McDonald's and the Texaco. So that's the reason why that was left off.
Yeah, and again, it's ironic that every time we found the high accidents, it was this through queue. So the through traffic is backing all the way up to here for this intersection. And so we say it's part of the accident history, but it's kind of a combination of the accident history and knowing that that's one of those places they're allowing that courtesy gap in, and coming down here another 550 feet to make that U-turn here is significantly safer.
Okay, thank you.
I might just add something on, since you have this pulled up, Lisa. I think this is a good example. We say that we're having this southbound left turn pocket at CarMax. That's true. But in actuality, in the PM peak hour, there's only about 4 cars that make that left turn, as I recall, something along that line. So we're obviously not building a turn pocket there for CarMax. It wouldn't be justified just to serve that business's needs in the PM peak hour, the afternoon peak hour traffic. It's really more than that, justified by the opportunity to do a U-turn. Again, trying to, yes, some people have to drive by their destination some distance to do the U-turn to get back, but we don't want that to be too long. So that's that 600-foot issue that we've talked about to make it less inconvenient. Yeah, and it will help CarMax as well, I guess. That has, an added benefit of the other 24 hours of the day or 23 hours of the day. But our focus is that PM peak hour in the afternoon, because that's the most challenging period throughout the day. And what that will do during that time is allow more U-turners too.
Mike Creekmore has his hand up. Mike, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. You had listed the sections for the project in the presentation there, and I just wanted to understand, does that reflect how the project will be tackled in different phases?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't think any of us can quite answer that yet. You're looking way out in terms of time to get this finished, unless something dramatic happens at the federal level to increase the amount of available funding for transportation projects that come to the state and local governments. It's probably, you're asking us to project out quite a long ways. We could start at one end and work towards the other. Right now, the city has something of a focus on the far south end of this corridor. And we're doing some community renewal planning. We're going to develop a plan for the south end. There's quite a few problems down there, less of them transportation related and more of them more social related issues. And that's what the community renewal plan is trying to address. But it makes sense to blend that in with the transportation improvements that'll also be put in there. So that probably would be the city's preference currently for the next project on the corridor. And then after that, it's a little less clear what the third one would be.
Okay. And then as the project goes along, will there be temporary driveway closures along the project, or will most of the work stay in the median area?
I think inevitably there will be some. That's always a difficult but important coordination that has to take place between the businesses, the property owners, and the project to try to make it as convenient. Yeah, it's never convenient to try to make it less inconvenient as much as we can.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mike, I just want to clarify. Phil answered kind of the process for getting all of the improvements done for what we call the stage one project. Was your question specific to how this median project's going to get constructed, like which sequence that was going to go in?
Yeah, because like back in the presentation, there were some of the slides,
Yeah.
I think had green backgrounds that said like section 1, section 2.
Yeah.
Listed.
Yeah. We broke the project into those segments just because they're potential pieces that we could build as we build out the ultimate project.
Mhm.
And we've been using them to do cost estimates by segment. But other than that, they're not really significant to the construction of this project.
Okay.
I expect that they'll work in more than one segment, more than one block at a time. Just trying to do light work as they move down the corridor.
And I think once we get a contractor selected, there'll be a certain amount of flexibility given to the contractor as to what their bid was based on, what sequence they want to. We may dictate some of that in the plans and specifications that are put out to bid, but things that are not dictated by the city, because the more things you put in there that dictate how they do things, the cost generally goes up. So there'll be some means and methods flexibility for the contractor as is normally the case.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I got a couple questions on the chat. It's mainly and it's not really related to this project, specifically the raised median, but there's some question about 224 in terms of vehicular safety and pedestrian safety. That's actually something that's been brought up in the past. In terms of there's just the striping. Right now there's a right turn lane in the eastbound direction, and then there's a combo left/through on the for the eastbound direction. And we're actually looking at maybe doing some striping changes to modify that, because it looks like there's some confusion from a vehicle point of view right now. I don't really want to go into too much detail on that one, but the person that sent it, Brenda, if you can maybe contact me and we can definitely have a discussion about this project, because I'm looking to do some striping changes, hopefully later this spring or summer at this intersection. I'd like to bring that up. Maybe have a side discussion.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And then another thing is, if you were talking about pedestrian safety, and that's the same thing, we're looking into some, we did add pedestrian leading intervals a couple years or last year. It basically, when a pedestrian's pushing the push button, and then the walk sign is turned on, the vehicles don't have the green button at the same time. There's actually a delay. There's about a 3-second delay, and that enables the pedestrian to start their crossing. They're actually already in the crosswalk a little bit, and it just gains more visibility to the drivers. So that has added some safety. But we can also talk about that if you'd like.
Actually, my pedestrian question was about the next block down at 76th and 224th. It's actually it's actually on 224th, but it's we're 73rd. I guess it's 73rd place. I'm sorry. It's on 224th, walking west. The first turn on to 73rd, where it's kind of the corner of it's the corner of where Montlake Terrace comes in. That particular intersection, there's a lot of pedestrians on it, and cars come through there and don't always stop. And there's just not great pedestrian area, but there are a lot of pedestrians coming into the condo complex and then headed south on 73rd.
Let's talk about that, since it's not really related to this project, and so that other people aren't really involved in that. Let's have another discussion. If you can call me or send me an email, I'd be more than willing to answer your questions.
Thank you.
And then there was another question regarding changing the timing at 212th, Highway 99, 212th. I mean, that intersection does have some challenging. It's right now the eastbound and westbound movements are split phase, meaning that they're not going concurrently, and that's the main issue at that intersection. So I mean, as part of in the long term, we do want to improve this intersection, do some capacity improvements, adding some left turn lanes, as well as potentially right turn lanes. So it becomes a lot more efficient, and yeah, the delay at that intersection right now is pretty significant. We want to improve that, but that's not part of this project because of the funding. That'll be part of the phase one I was initially talking about, the $184 million. That'll be a part of that improvement. We'll want to improve signal, the phasing, and the whole intersection from a signal point of view.
It's probably good to just sort of mention again, this is a really big project. Ultimately, you're just looking at a small window of it on this median project to start out with. There's all the frontage improvements that we mentioned earlier, and then there's a variety of significant intersection improvements that will also be pursued over the years. So, and that's the 184 million, which probably will be a lot more than that before it's ever done. And I think that's in about $2017 at this point. But that gives you an idea of what the effort will be. Pretty much everything along Highway 99 will change from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk, and at every intersection, there will be improvements made. Traffic volumes will be going up over that time. Development, we expect to, I mean, look at all the development pressure that took place in Shoreline is right after their Highway 99 project, and during it and after it. And that's coming north now. It's headed our way. We've already got two great big projects, residential projects. One on the, let's see, northwest corner of 234th, is it? Yeah. And then one on the southeast corner of 236th. And I think that's well over 200 units. And the first one was like 191 units. And you can, drive along Highway 99, you can see there's probably going to be some changes over time in some of the existing businesses and properties that are going to be ripe for redevelopment. So that's going to increase the amount of local traffic, increase the amount of pedestrians, and all that has to be handled by this transportation system.
And if you go out on the website, it's edmondscorridor99.org. We do talk a little bit about the big project, and that's the stage 1 piece, and this project, which is the stage 2 piece. So you can get a little bit more info on the big picture too.
Lisa, I see there's, I don't have any other chat question, but I see, does Hank have a question?
Yep.
I see his hand up, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I do have a question, but first, thank you for an excellent presentation. I missed the first 10 minutes, so maybe you covered my question then, and if so, I apologize. But as you know, I'm a bicyclist, and rarely I ride the full length of 99 through Edmonds, but much more frequently I go up there, and particularly now that we have better access from the north, I'll ride up there and I'll go to a store. And so I may want to cover just a couple blocks along Highway 99 on my bicycle. Can you tell me what is being done to accommodate bicyclists and make it so that we can access the shopping there. And I would expect that right now there are probably not too many bicyclists, but you'll probably find a lot more with the greater use of electric bikes. So has that been considered? Thank you.
Do you want me to try that, Phil?
Yeah, go ahead and start.
Okay, so when we looked at the ultimate project, and I'm showing you this intersection for a reason, we actually need in several locations to put in dual left turn lanes. 220th is one of them. The left turn movements, both northbound and southbound, are so significant. And to get the timing of the signal set so that the level of service isn't as bad as it is now, we're going to have to add another left turn pocket here and another left turn pocket here. So they're side by side, right? When we do that, you can see how close we are to this building already. And we're into this really close to the shell building also. And that happens, that's just an example, that happens up and down the corridor in a couple of places where we need to widen the roadway. And that's without considering bike facilities. Nobody has added bike facilities on SR 99. It's not the right route for that because we've got the interurban trail for the bikes, but I get what you're talking about, the local access part. And I think that's going to have to be mostly managed with the new sidewalks that are supposed to be installed. And we don't like bikes on sidewalks, but it'll be the safest place to go with a little wider sidewalk that'll be constructed. And you can't see that improvement here, but the goal is to keep the majority of the traffic on the interurban trail with connections at each of the intersections going east-west. And then as you have to access a business, like you said, it's a block or two, and we probably have to rely on the wider bikes or sidewalks for that. We just don't have the room to put in a multi-use path.
I wonder if you've considered alternatives that don't involve widening the road. I mean, frankly, even though I don't feel entirely comfortable, well, first of all, I don't like to ride on sidewalks. I think that belongs to pedestrians. And I don't want to interfere with them by riding my bike on a sidewalk. So I'll ride on the inner lane, the lane that now is used by buses. But I would feel safer if that lane had sharrows in it, and with the understanding that bikes would have to give way to buses if a bus came up behind you. But again, a lot of bicyclists don't want to interfere with pedestrians. And they want to rely on what the law gives us, and that is access to the roadway.
I understand. I don't think we'd put sharrows on a 45-mile-an-hour roadway. I think that's actually probably outside of the best practice for a sharrow. And we certainly wouldn't want you to have to give way to a bus that's coming up behind you. I don't even know how I'd make that sign look, but that's something we can continue to talk about as we get into these stages of the project. And maybe we can add wider facilities and parts of the project, but it won't be continuous through the project because we don't have the right of way available to widen anything. We're stretched from literally we're kissing this building, and I think we might even have to take the corner of the building, and we're taking out like one lane of the pumps at the Shell station just to get through, and that's not uncommon.
I can appreciate the difficulty, but you will still have bicyclists riding the route from north to south. There are 3 bicyclists, and it's interurban is not very convenient if you're going that direction. Not like in Shoreline where you have a bicycle route that parallels 99, or some of the other examples you showed where there are bicycle facilities that parallel the route. So
and
whatever you can do.
The city is working on those east-west connections between. So the interurbans over here on the east side, the city is working on these east-west connections to connect the interurban on different projects.
And I appreciate that very much. But whatever you can do to make 99 safer to those bicyclists who will still use it, I'd appreciate it.
I appreciate that, and we'll definitely keep it top of our minds.
And I think, a lot of the frontage improvements, Hank, it may not be possible for the city to fully fund all of those or expect that we will be the constructors of all of those. We may be the people that require those frontage improvements as development reoccurs along the corridor or redevelopment occurs. So I think that would be the most cost-effective way for the public to get the frontage improvements rebuilt and widen the sidewalks, put in planter strips, potentially on both sides, really warm the corridor up. And if you get wide enough dedications of open space in front of new developments, I know it isn't the preferred method of getting back and forth for a block or two. Personally, I'm not as robust a bicyclist as you are, Hank. I'd probably roll my bike down the sidewalk. I think I'd feel a little more safer there. But like you said earlier too, the coming of mass quantities of electric bicycles who aren't limited necessarily speed-wise to what we would normally, see today. That could be that's going to be a really interesting situation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
See, it's almost 7 o'clock, and I don't see any other. I don't have any question. I don't see any other question on chat. Is there any other raised hands, or do you guys have any other questions?
There aren't at this time, so we could take maybe one more if.
Yeah, one more question, one or two more questions, if anything, if you guys have any.
Yeah, I came in late. I just have one question about the hot crosswalk and a little bit more info about that. Did you guys already cover that pretty thoroughly, or do you mind going over that briefly?
Not at all.
No, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, guys.
Let me just jump over here. So this is a location for the proposed pedestrian actuated signal. And it's just north of 234th, about 600 feet. And so there's a crosswalk that zigzags, and the reason it zigzags is so we can get the pedestrians, as I totally lose my sheet there. There we go.
Lost your sheet?
My mouse, yeah, that too. My mouse went crazy. So we have the crossing here for pedestrians, and we propose that be a pedestrian actuated signal. And what we haven't determined yet is whether that will be a hawk signal or a half signal. And a half signal is red, yellow, green, works just the same way any other signal does. And 99.5% of our users would never know it was a half signal, right? It just looks like a signal, and it's only actuated when the pedestrians are there. The other option is to put in a hawk signal, and this talks a little bit about how the hawk signal works. The true difference is that in the hawk signal, there's a stop phase where it goes all red, and then after a little bit of time, it starts to flash red. And if the pedestrians have cleared your direction of traffic, you're allowed to go. So we can keep traffic moving a little bit better with a hawk signal than we can with a half signal. The half signal, we'd have to try and give them a red signal all the way across the 84-foot street. Did that answer your questions? Do you have any more questions about how that works?
No, I was curious. I think it's really necessary. I think it's going to be a great addition. I see a lot of people trying to scurry across there, sometimes not too safe. So yeah, I'm happy about it.
Good.
Hey,
Thank
Larry,
you.
does My Edmonds News have any questions?
No, I don't have anything for you right now, Phil. It's been a very interesting
Okay.
session, though. I've
Okay.
learned a lot. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
And Bertrand, I think
Anybody-
you wanted a presentation at the end of this. I'll fix a couple of things and send you a PowerPoint here in a few minutes.
I'm sorry, I did have one more question, and it's just in regards of the raised landscape medians. Are those all throughout that whole renovation of the corridor, or is it just through particular blocks?
The raised landscape medians are going in where the median's wider. So pretty much where we're like 8 feet and wider, there'll be the raised 18-inch curb.
And that
then
is
it'll
what street?
drop down where it's a short curb.
Sorry, and if that's from what street to what street?
Um,
244th to north of 212th, up to about 210. But there's a lot of gaps, of course, where we have left turn pockets and intersections and so forth and so on. And as she kind of scrolls through that, the green patches are where we have a ground cover and trees installed. And then occasionally, like this one, there's some really long turn pockets based on the average daily traffic and particularly the PM peak hour traffic. And so in some areas, we'll have long stretches of landscape median, and others they'll be fairly short.
Yeah,
and,
beautiful.
and we're going to post some of this so you can see it, but you can tell the red pattern is showing you where it's a hardscape of some sort, and the green is all landscaping. And if there's a tree in it, it's a raised median. That's the best way to figure it out.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other, I think that's it. Like I said before, if there's any follow-up questions in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, whenever, you guys have access to the website. Like Lisa says, you have all our contact information, and we'd be more than willing to answer any of those questions at that time. With that said, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to attend this.
B, there was one more question that just popped up, I think. Says, what is your estimated timeline for redesigning the concrete structure at 76th? Will the public be able to comment on the design? I guess I'd just say quickly, I think we'd be looking for primarily consistency throughout the landscape median areas along the whole corridor, that probably using, I mean, I don't know that we'll be varying the type of trees or the ground cover. I think if we find something that we think is the lowest maintenance, we probably go with that, but we want it to look nice. And so I'm not sure we'd be doing anything different in that existing median that was done a few years ago. It's hardscaped on the top. We'll try to open it up and make sure it has access to soil, and then plant something similar there. I don't think there'll be a special design on that one. I don't know if that was the thrust of your question, the landscape design or the design of the median itself.
It was the landscape design, because that concrete's not very pretty.
No, it isn't. But the intent would be, I don't know if it'll have to all come out or whether the walls would stay and you could create a landscape median within that, yet to be determined. But good question. And there may have been one right before that. I'm sorry, but it says at the hawk signal. Suggestion, I guess, put a push button on the median so PEDs don't get stuck there.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, that's something we might look into, because it's a long crossing. Obviously, every pedestrian's got a different speed, so we'll definitely take a look at that. I mean, that's something as we move forward after the 30%, we're going to look into more details on such items.
And Bertrand, before we wrap up, I just wanted to point out, this is the Edmonds Corridor 99.org. And if you come in here, you land on the homepage. If you just click on the open house, it'll take you to a new page. And right down here, he has an open house survey under the pictures. If you all take a second and just answer that real quick and give us any comments that you didn't get out, or ask us any questions that you did. This is also where you want to sign up for future mailings. And that's all I've got, Bertrand.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today. Hope you guys have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.